everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Carl Rubin. I'm currently the chairperson of Israel Programming for the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs, also known as the FJMC. We are an international organization with 20,000 members worldwide. Membership is available as part of your synagogue, and we also offer an individual membership that is open to anyone. Since the tragic events of October 7th, we have initiated a powerful program called Israel on My Mind. Israel on My Mind consists of two components. The first is a personal reflection where individuals are invited to submit a short piece on their personal connection with Israel. It can be a past experience with Israel, something current, or even something in the future. The key is that it be a personal connection with Israel that you have. We then share many of the reflections with others on our website, which is fjmc.org. The second component of Israel on My Mind is why we are here tonight. Every month, we will be presenting a speaker or speakers who have some deep connection to Israel and will share with you their experience. These speakers can range from those with personal experiences, such as our guest tonight, to those living and or working in Israel. We also plan to feature authors or writers with some connection to Israel, as well as those involved in Israeli cooking, art, technology, and sports. And if you have any ideas for future guests, please reach out to me. Tonight, we are so pleased to welcome several people from the Friends of the Israel Defense Forces, also known as FIDF. Our featured guest, lone soldier parent, David Lubin from Atlanta, is the father of Rose Lubin, who was tragically killed in action on November 6th. And lone soldier Eli Wininger. Eli spent 3 years serving as commander for the Elite Egoz Unit. On October 7th, when tragedy struck in Israel, he returned to Israel to join his fellow soldiers for the fight for their lives and for the future of Israel. Facilitating tonight's conversation, we have Jennifer Scher. Jennifer is a relations person. She values each conversation and wants to learn how and why people choose to connect to Jewish life, Israel, and each other. She places an emphasis on joy and its impact on decision-making. As a Jewish professional for nearly 20 years, Jennifer has spent much of her career engaged in the strengthening of Jewish life and community. Jennifer currently serves as the Vice President for FIDF's MidAtlantic Region, supporting communities from Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, Washington, D.C., Virginia, West Virginia, and North Carolina. Her goal is to bring Israel to our communities and our communities to Israel. She lives in Fairfax, Virginia, where she and her family are proud members of Congregation Olam Tikva and actively engaged in Jewish life across Northern Virginia and Greater Washington. It is my pleasure now to introduce Jennifer Scher.
First of all, thank you so much for welcoming FIDF into your series. It's really very special. I would be remiss if I didn't do a special shout out to Irv Varconi from Olam Tikva, who really welcomed us in and made all the connections to make tonight possible. So thank you. A very quick overview. I know that people are signed in from across the country and Eli from across the globe. And I want to give respect to the time that you're giving us tonight. Everyone's coming to this with like a different understanding of what Friends of the IDF is. And I just want to be able to give you a little bit of that overview of what is our work. And then we'll really be able to hear from our very, very special speakers this evening. FIDF is the officially designated nonprofit of the IDF. So what that means is we work in direct partnership with IDF leadership to determine what are the appropriate needs. The IDF gives us their requests. We don't sit around a table and say, ooh, wouldn't it be fun if we funded this or we funded that? We really do. The IDF says we need this many winter fleeces for our soldiers. We need this medical equipment. We need this PTSD support. So as our men and women in the IDF are right now fighting, the most horrific war in Israel's 76-year history, we're reaching out and we're there more than ever. We get selfies from our soldiers holding our care packages. I have a WhatsApp filled with images of soldiers who, some are from our local communities, some I've met along the way. And when they're in the field, they see FIDF sort of all over with their care packages. I've never been thanked for talc powder up until this point, but that was actually one of the things that Eli appreciates it, was particularly appreciated. So those little care packages with what's needed for soldier well-being, you know, we are the yes and. We are the comfort items, and we are the necessary items. We do everything from field hospitals to ambulances. I say, you know, not everything we do gets a sexy label on it. You know, sometimes you feel like, oh, there's a capital project and you're going to put your name on it and it's really exciting. And also we do funeral vehicles, which unfortunately there've been significant requests from the IDF for funeral vehicles. Everything that we do is really to care not just for the soldier, but for their entire family. And you'll hear a little bit about that tonight. When our initial estimates after October 7th were that the IDF was requesting in the range of $50 to $60 million. That estimate is now in excess of $170 million, and it includes special projects related to PTSD, bereaved family support, and the reconstruction of the bases that had been attacked. So we are really in it, in the thick of it, for whatever the IDF needs. It's very special for me to be able to sit here with you tonight and share a little bit. Tonight, we're going to focus, while there's so much that FIDF does, and I could sit on here for hours with you and answer all of your questions. We really are going to talk tonight just about our lone soldier support, which is a key pillar before October 7th and now, a key pillar of support. So a lone soldier is a soldier who volunteers to be in the IDF. They go from another country, whether it's the United States or it's the former Soviet Union or it's Australia or it's England, Canada. We literally have lone soldiers from across the world. And getting the lone soldier designation is very special because it opens the door to very specific services and resources in Israel. 50% of the lone soldiers, there are like 6,000 to 7,000 lone soldiers at any given moment. 50% of those lone soldiers are actually also Israelis. So they're orphan Israelis. They are perhaps Haredi whose family did not approve of them joining the IDF. They also get the designation of lone soldier, and therefore they get some of the special supports that we're able to provide. So some of those include lone soldier flights home. So if you are a lone soldier, we guarantee you 1 flight home. And if you are a combat soldier, we pay for 2 flights home. Those are fully paid for by FIDF. We are currently, before the war started, and now it's picked back up again, we're in the process of building a lone soldier apartment complex in Rishon LeZion. It's going to be an 8-story complex that is going to be available for lone soldiers to be able to have all the comforts that they need at a very reasonable, being able to afford it as well. And it'll be part of the lone soldier services. Nefesh B'Nefesh is our key partner on the ground. If you've ever worked with Nefesh B'Nefesh, they really welcome in all of the those who are making Aliyah, and Nefesh B'Nefesh cares for all of the lone soldier needs. So we have this one thing called Errand Day, and it's like a Yom Kef, right? Eli's nodding his head already. So we call all of the lone soldiers to Tel Aviv in this giant conference center. And the idea is, like, nobody is denying that Israel is this like giant bureaucracy, and it can be a total headache. And when you're coming in, like, you don't know what to do. So we make it as easy as possible. It's funded by FIDF. Nefesh B'Nefesh is on the ground making sure everything happens. And you can get your driver's license, and you can get your health insurance card, and you can, anything you need, it's there. And also food and swag and fun, and like, all of the lone soldiers get off of their service for that day to go. I had a lone soldier actually delay coming home so that he wouldn't miss that one day. So, and then since October 7th, one of the special things is, while we've been so busy historically flying the soldiers home, we put it in reverse, and we created Operation Hug with Nefesh B'Nefesh. And we were able to fly the parents to Israel to be able to see their children who have been in service and they have been worried about. And so Operation Hug has been an amazingly meaningful thing. And it's something that if you have contributed to the emergency campaign or if you did a special gift to Operation Hug, it was very much utilized by many, many families in all of our communities. With that, I want to share and invite Eli to really join us and to speak. Eli is going to share his own story. I know that Carl gave you a little brief intro to him, but nothing is better than letting Eli really share about himself and his story. So Eli, thank you so much for being here with us today. If you could share with us a little bit of your background and experience that led to your service and how you ended up in an extremely elite unit.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and to speak with everyone tonight. So I was born and raised in LA to a Jewish family. My grandpa on my dad's side was a Holocaust survivor, and then on my mom's side, her parents had both escaped religious persecution from Tunisia. And both sides had made their way to Israel, which had saved both of them. Everyone on my dad's side had been murdered in the Holocaust. So for me, from both sides, I received the education that Israel is this pillar that needs to exist for the Jewish people, for us, so that we can always feel safe and always have a place to go to and to shelter us. And on my mom's side, she had ended up being raised in Israel, so I was constantly surrounded by this Israeli community. I'd visited Israel numerous times. I always had this deep connection every time I just stepped foot off the plane that this is home. And whenever I got in political arguments in college or whatever it would be, I always felt like there was something more that I could be doing. So when 2014 came around and Operation Protective Edge was there, I felt like I'd already missed my chance, quote unquote, to defend the Jewish people, because I would have been in that war if I'd gone before college, and I had friends that were. I knew that there was more that I could be doing besides arguing with people on Instagram and Facebook that Israel is not this enemy state. So I decided I had the prescience to not just drop out, and I waited to graduate and right away enlisted in the IDF. Joined a unit called Egoz, which is a special forces unit that specializes in reconnaissance and guerrilla warfare against Hezbollah up in the northern region, so Lebanon and Syria, and we were also combating ISIS back in the day. So as we do, I was a commander there for about a year and a half, and the first year and a half is our training.
Tell us a little bit about your experience during your service and then establishing your life after your service and going back to LA and then jumping right back into it, after October 7th. Share a little bit about that journey.
Sure. So a little bit, for the most part, one of the things I'd always said before my initial service, so I joined from 2016 to 2019, and the war had just ended, and we were hoping that there would never be another war. And one of the things I had said was, please God that I'm joining and wanting to go and defend Israel and all that, but hopefully I don't have to do anything, and it's the most boring 3 years of my life, because that means that Israel's in a state of general peace. And while it wasn't definitely not the most boring 3 years of my life, because there's constantly something going on in Israel, for the most part, relative to Israel's history, those years were fairly quiet, which was good. And we had several missions along the southern border, so in Gaza, when Trump had moved his embassy to Jerusalem, that caused a huge uprising along the border. Many missions in the West Bank, preventing terrorists from committing attacks inside of Israel. And then when tunnels were discovered from Lebanon entering Israel, which was something they never thought was possible because it's easy to dig tunnels in the sand down south between Gaza and Israel. They didn't think that, I think it's granite up in the mountains in Israel. They didn't think that that was doable to dig massive tunnels through, especially at the depths that Lebanon, Hezbollah was digging them. So we had a major several-month operation to defend Israel from that. And their plan, Hezbollah's plan, was to carry out on October 7th using those tunnels. So we had forwarded that mission. After finishing my 3-year service there, I traveled for 9 months, like every Israeli does. Came back home, started, just working, normal life, getting back into it. Was 3-4 years behind all of my peers who had joined the workforce right after college, and just got into a normal life. And then on October 7th, when I checked the news, I remember first thing in the morning, not even 3-4 in the morning, I couldn't sleep, had anxiety in my stomach for whatever reason. And when I checked the news, I just jumped out of bed right away. Had just started texting all my friends in Israel, texted my teammates in Israel. I hadn't been at reserve duty for several years. So I texted all my teammates to see if we had been called back. Found out we had, and, booked a flight that minute. First flight available was October 9th. And I, flew back as quickly as possible. And then so I arrived October 10th. And the first, I'd say, 2 months of the war, my unit, because we specialize in Hezbollah, so up in the north, Israel's major fear was, including before October 7th, was that Hezbollah was going to carry out an October 7th-like attack. We majorly underestimated Hamas. And Hezbollah is 10 times stronger, their military capabilities, than Hamas. So we had expected that to come from the north. In addition, if you look at Israel's history, which probably most people here are familiar with, our enemies like to attack us all at the same time. So Israel's big fear was that Hamas had carried out the mission from the south, and shortly after, Lebanon was going to come from the north and try to surprise us in some way. So they'd sent my whole team and our whole unit, which was thousands if you look at the reservists, up north. And we spent about 2 months there, both training, which was really good for us because, the first 3 weeks of the war, Israel carried out an aerial bombardment before actually going in with the ground invasion. So during those 3 weeks, all the reservists were able to train. But those first 2 months, my unit was really able to, clean up the dust, get the rust off, whatever the expression is, and get our chemistry back, relearn our tactics, do everything like that. It was, I'd say Israel and Lebanon had kept it on medium heat, if you want to call it, since pretty early on in the war. It's still like that. So at one point, they'd moved our unit down to the West Bank, which had really started acting up. You're seeing a lot more attacks. For example, the Ra'anana one, if anyone remembers, that was a major one. So they had sent us down south to go and make a bunch of arrests that wouldn't happen again. After 2 weeks of that, they had officially sent us into Gaza. So we spent all of December and January inside of Gaza with a couple of little breaks here and there coming out. And every time we did get a break coming out, we'd receive a goodie bag with FIDF goodies and talc, just as he said. And talc is very important. It's beyond important. So we spent the first, we spent 2 months inside of Gaza. And I think, our units, because we're reservists, the majority of the people that were, really tip of the spear, if you want to call it, is the full-time active duty soldiers. But what happens is Israel goes in, and let's say they go into Gaza City. They're going to go and they're going to check out the most, the areas that are most strategically powerful and where there's the highest likelihood of Hamas. They're going to, or hostages. I should switch that. most likelihood of hostages and also from us. And once they clear that area and they feel like they've had some sort of military presence there, again, it's far from the whole city. It's maybe 20% of the city, but it's the major dominant areas, and they've cleared everyone out as well. Once they're there, then they're going to move on to the next part, and that's like the front of the spear. After that, you have a lot of the reservist units that were going in, and our job was to really thoroughly clear and check every single house throughout the rest of whatever city or town or camp that we were in. So that's what we did. We would just go, we'd take a certain area, and many of them there'd be intelligence of, there would be intelligence coming in. It wasn't just, completely orderless of just going randomly house by house, but we receive intelligence that there's tunnels in a certain area that they haven't searched yet, or that there's intelligence in a certain area, or Hamas activity, whatever it may be, and we would go search house by house for all of that. And over the course of the time, we found several tunnels, one of which was it's called the Pentagon, and it's named after the U.S. Pentagon. And it's essentially the intelligence headquarters. A lot of you guys may have seen it months ago. There was a big release that they found a tunnel, and you can see a bunch of wires and computers down at the bottom. So one of the tunnels had led to there, and that was actually found in between an elementary school and a middle school, which we were literally right next to. And yeah, I mean, there were just, I could go on for days talking about all of the different bunch of missions and all that. But I think one of the biggest things that you feel, and that I had felt, and that all of us felt in there, was two things. One, that you're doing something important. Everyone's sense of purpose, whether you agreed politically or not on all sorts of things, everyone's sense of purpose for that particular mission, why we were there, had never been higher in our lives. I knew that, that was, when I look back, let's say on my deathbed or to my grandkids or whatever, and I look back at the most important things I've done in my life, that's going to be in the top 5, is defending Israel. So everyone had this sense of purpose, that this was our time to really stand and rise. And it brought us together. And the other thing is, connected to that, is that we all felt that we had the Jewish people behind us, and at the same time we were kind of carrying the Jewish people on our soldiers, not to put it in that way, but we felt that if we're not here, if we're not doing this right now, the Jewish people may not have a home. It's something that we really felt. I'll let you get back to it. I said a lot of things here.
Thank you. Listen, for what it's worth, you say you were carrying it on your shoulders. All of us here wanted to carry you on our shoulders. And
we felt it. We definitely felt it. I mean, one of the things I always say is the prayers, the barbecues, the random letters that we got. I mean, I remember sending, this is one of the cutest things, but I remember sending letters when I was, 8 years old in 2nd grade as a Jewish kid in elementary school. And there was probably some war going on, or maybe it wasn't a war, and we would send letters to the IDF soldiers. And then I remember being in Gaza, receiving letters from elementary school kids in LA, coincidentally, saying that they're with us, which felt like a full circle moment.
It's definitely, we're feeling it here. How does your family feel about where you are, the decisions? This is perhaps also a big question. One of the things that we've really done is we've created in the MidAtlantic region in particular, and I know the other communities, so wherever you are, this similarly exists, is in the same way that when you're in school, you have PTO and the parent teacher organizations, the parents have these like WhatsApp groups to support their soldiers, and they are delivering food to bases, and they're exchanging who's doing what and who needs what. And it's, the IDF has like Jewish mothers on steroids. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to create that locally. And so for our community here in the DC and Northern Virginia area, we've created a WhatsApp group for lone soldier parents, and actually the Jewish Social Service Agency has, without charging us, we've been getting the parents together for for their own therapeutic supports with group therapy and conversation so that they could share their fears. So I imagine that your parents are checking up on you and stalking you too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I also wanted to mention while we were in there, another big thing that unified us, that we all knew why we were there, was, October 7th, the hostages and all of the victims on October 7th. And it's something that we carried with us the whole time. I had friends in there whose close friends and relatives had either been taken hostage or murdered. So everyone felt that on a very, very deep level. But yeah, when I was in there, I mean, I remember telling my mom that I was gonna, fly back to Israel to join the war. She nearly had a, heart attack, and really did not want me to go back. But well, once I was in there, it was just a full group effort on all the moms, on my parents, on my family, to just support. I created a group that was supposed to initially just be for my immediate family and then extended family of cousins on all sides, so I don't have to update everyone. Called Eli Safety Updates, and I would just send them little I'm safe every day or two, and that turned into a group of like 200 people. Of like, anytime someone ended up hearing about it, they'd get added. And there was, I was the only one allowed to type in it because otherwise it becomes just a normal group chat, as we all are familiar with. But yeah, I mean, I think that the support group, and I think, I think that's the next phase, which is one of my favorite parts about FIDF. On the side note, I'm also on the executive board of FIDF in LA, and I was on the board before October 7th, and I'm still on the board now. And it was one of the things that, coming from my full-time service, 2016 to 2019, I had just, I hadn't maybe heard of FIDF a little bit beforehand, but I was a high school kid / college, didn't have too much exposure to them. But when I was in the IDF, it was an organization that I would just constantly see in different places, whether it's a building, whether it's the Yom Sidurim, which is like the errand day, whether it was a Yom Kef, whether there's just a million different things that I constantly saw FIDF involved with. And I was like, okay, this is clearly getting to the soldiers because I'm here and I'm feeling their impact constantly. So when I finished my service, I knew that that was an organization I wanted to attach myself to because it had impacted me. So similar, one of the things I like a lot about FIDF, and I promise you she didn't ask me to say all of this stuff, but one of the things I love about FIDF is, I think a lot of people had been donating at the beginning of the war, both to FIDF and all the different campaigns to get soldiers equipment that we did desperately need because there wasn't enough equipment for at least good quality equipment. But I think what FIDF really focuses on that others don't as much is the therapy, is the getting families together, is the bereavement, is PTSD, is physical therapies, all these things that soldiers really, really, really need. And it's what everyone forgets about. The first part is sexy. Everyone's jumping on the first few weeks, but just as important, if not, I don't want to say more, but just as important is the cleanup, and the cleanup's going to be bad.
Eli, thank you so much, and please stay on with us while we introduce David Lubin. We'll have an opportunity at the end. I know that there's a lot of questions. I can even see people sort of jotting as we're here together. David, before you speak, if it's okay, I'd like to share a video with Rose.
Oh Lord, I serve in Magav, which stands for border guard, even though what I guard is not a border. I am essentially a combat-trained soldier specializing in anti-terrorism with the authority of a police officer. Magav Yerushalayim's motto is, generations dreamed to arrive to Jerusalem, and we have the honor to protect her. There are generations of my family who could have been here today if there wasn't Israel during the Holocaust. I feel an obligation to them to fulfill the opportunities they didn't have. It's our duty to watch over the Jews who are living the dream of walking to the Kotel on Shabbat.
David Lubin, Rose's father, is here with us today. First of all, David, we are all here with you as a collective family. David is here with us from Atlanta, and I know that you have been sharing Rose's story so beautifully with so many and everybody who will listen, Jewish and non-Jewish crowds, everything, and the strength required to do that is absolutely just incredible. And we talk about heroes all the time, and we talk about our heroes as soldiers, and we really recognize, David, that you are indeed a hero here with us as well. Tell us a little bit about what inspired Rose to leave everything here in the US and to become a lone soldier in the IDF.
Jennifer, thanks first of all for having me on and allowing me to speak to everybody about Rose. It helps us as a bereaved family to get to talk about her. So I appreciate everyone listening to her story and hearing it to start with. So when Rose was 5 years old, her Zadie took her to Israel on her first trip there. And when she got there, she didn't want to come back. We had to negotiate with her to get her back on the airplane, actually, because she said she wasn't going to come without an agreement that she would get to go back within a couple of years. So I made the agreement with her. We got her back to the United States, and within 2 years, she was saying, "Dad, when are you taking me? When are you taking me?" And I was like, remember when I had other children, so I was like, "Rose, we'll get there. We'll get there." So she picks up the phone and she starts calling her Zadie and telling on me. And her Zadie then starts calling me and saying, "You got to take her." So we took her back on that trip when she was 8. And when I got there with her, I saw how she changed completely. I mean, she was a new person. And when she came back from that trip, she started telling everyone that she was going to move to Israel when she turned 18. In fact, I would witness her on the playgrounds when she would meet other kids, and the kids would say, "Let's be friends." And Rose would always, say, "Okay, we can be friends, but when I turn 18, I'm moving to Israel to join the IDF." So she knew where she was going at a very, very young age.
What are some things you want people to know about her as a person? What are the things you really seek to share about Rose?
So Rose was a very unique person. Number one, her hair was always a different color. When she turned, I guess, 12, she learned that she could dye her hair, and she would change the color of her hair probably every 6 weeks. And her clothes never matched. She was just this free-spirited child, and it wasn't like she was rebelling against us, which was something that we looked at like, okay, the kid with the crazy hair, what's going on there? But she was a straight-A student, was kind, was sweet, was a good person, but she just had this uniqueness on how she wanted to express herself. And we learned very soon that with your kids, pick your battles. If your kids are good kids and they're doing good things, let them be who they are. So we never stood in the way of that. But another thing about Rose is that she didn't gossip. It was very, very important to her not to gossip about people. And I even saw this at a very young age when she was in preschool. A rabbi came back and told me a story after she passed away, because I said at her funeral that Rose didn't gossip. Okay, which is a big thing. And I came back from her funeral, and he said, you said something. This was the rabbi. He said, "You said something in the funeral that she didn't gossip." And I want to tell you a story that I never told you. When Rose was 5 years old, my daughter was in preschool with her, and she came home from preschool, and she was very upset. And he went to his daughter and said, "What are you so upset about?" And he said, "There's a girl in school who says she's not coming back because all the girls are gossiping." And he said, "Do you know who that girl was?" And I'm like, "I bet you it was Rose." He said, "Yes." And that was the story that everyone told us about Rose that knew her, for all the way from her being 5 years old to up till she was 20. She didn't talk about people. She walked away from people that when they were gossiping. It was important to her. She understood the significance of being kind to people and not judging people. And it rolled off of her in a very genuine way that everybody saw. Everyone who saw her and knew her understood that she was someone who was really, really special.
You know that on Yom HaZikaron, President Herzog spoke about Rose's heroism. Can you share with us, what happened for her on October 7th, her own October 7th experience, and what happened in the days that followed?
So, well, Rose's lone soldier, she was a lone soldier, and her host family there lived on Kibbutz Sa'ad. And Sa'ad is probably 1.5 kilometers, from the border. It's right there. You can see Gaza City from her kibbutz. And we got a call on that evening when the rockets started coming in, and she said that she was safe and she was in a shelter. And we got a call a few hours later from her that said, I have my gun and I have my uniform, and I'm going to go and guard the gate. And we didn't hear from her for, I guess it was another, anywhere, I think it might have been about 15 hours that we didn't hear from her after that. And we were terrified. We were watching the news, and we saw what was happening. And I felt a level of paralysis. Like I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what was happening to her. And I got a call from her after, I guess it was after about 15 hours, I got a phone call from her, and we were relieved. And she just said, she was kind of laughing in a way. She was like, I guess she was kind of like this high that she'd been in a battle. And I was like, she's like, Dad, I was in a war. I was in a battle. And we survived. And, we didn't really talk. I just said, Rose, go get some sleep, get some rest. She said her commander was coming to pick her up the next day. The next day we talked, and she had told me that she spent the day just letting people in and out of a gate. That's all I knew. And I knew that she had to go back on duty back to Jerusalem, because you have to understand, Rose served in Magav, okay? And Magav is a anti-terrorist border control type of, it's a unit. And she was a police officer. And where she was based was in the old city, and she served in the Muslim Quarter, which is probably one of the most difficult places in the country to be a police officer, or probably in the world, actually. And she would serve on, the Temple Mount. She would serve at the gates, and she would guard them. And I knew that she had to go back. So we had a discussion. I said, Rose, you're going to have to take what happened on October 7th and compartmentalize it, because you're going back to guard Muslims. And you're going to have to be, you're not going to be able to bring what you saw there to work. And she went right back to work. She put it away. We didn't talk about it until about 2 weeks after October 7th. My sister was actually in LA, and she was at a Federation event, and she got a taxi cab with someone who was going to the event, and they started talking about that she was from Atlanta. And she said, have you heard of this girl, Hero Rose? And my sister was like, who are you talking about, Hero Rose from Atlanta? And she said, no. She said, this girl who opened this gate single-handedly and saved people from the Nova Music Festival. And we were like, my sister was like, are you talking about my niece? And she's like, she said, Rose Lubin. We said, yeah, that's the girl. And my sister calls me, and then I call up Rose, and I'm like, Rose, they're calling you Hero Rose in Atlanta. And she's like, I'm never coming back to Atlanta. That's what she said to me. And she said, Dad, it's true. I opened up the gate. I brought in probably about over 200 people from the Nova Music Festival who were fleeing. That's how close she was. And she brought them to safety. And I just said, wow, Rose, I'm gonna get t-shirts made. And then she said, well, I'm not coming back to America now. So, and then, at that point, I was very proud of her, but I also knew that we didn't need to get into this now. This is something we were going to get into later on in life. And then, of course, on November 6th, she was attacked while she was on duty, and a 16-year-old attacked her with a knife, and she died from the wounds. And she fought. She saved people that day, that where her base was. If he'd gotten past Rose, he would have gotten into the base, and there were unarmed people in there. So she gave her life to save other people then. And so I have to go deeper on October 7th too, because we didn't know what Rose had actually completely done on October 7th until we got to Israel for her funeral. And there were 15,000 people at her funeral that came to honor her and to honor us. And it wasn't until we were sitting Shiva that people started coming to us and telling us the stories of what she really did that day. One person came and told me that while they were guarding, Rose saw Hamas and physically knocked him down and saved their lives as bullets flew over their head. Another man came to me and told me that he was a paratrooper who was actually serving up near Lebanon, and he'd gotten some time off, and he came down to see me while I was sitting Shiva, and he said that he had come to Saad to find a way to land helicopters, because Saad was one of the only places that didn't get infiltrated. And he said that he came to this gate, he saw Rose, and he looked at her, and you got to understand, Rose is only about 5 feet tall. And he saw her, and he was like, I need help. And he was but she looked at him and said, I know exactly what to do. You follow me, come with me now. And he said he took her to the helicopter pads as bullets were flying over their heads, and helped him land the first helicopters that got into the area to go save people. So on top of just, her bringing all the people in from the Nova Music Festival, we learned of this, her acts of heroism that day.
Unbelievable. As a parent who's experienced such profound loss, how do you find the strength to do this? You've now really taken the role of sharing her story really all over. Does that help you? Does that help you with the healing?
Yes, it does. Rose looked at every day of her life as an opportunity to do something. When she was 12 years old, she wrote in her bat mitzvah speech, that we all have an opportunity to make a difference every day. And she wasn't going to waste a moment of life not trying to change things for the better. And she has motivated me to wake up every day of my life and really ask myself, what am I doing? And I think that should stand for all of us, especially with right now with what's going on in Israel, that we all need to wake up every day and ask ourselves, what are we really doing? Are we doing enough? Are we helping out enough? Are we being loud enough? When we see all the things that are happening around in Israel and what we see happening here in this country, it's easy to sit by and not do anything, but that's not what my daughter did. That's not what the soldiers there every day are doing. And we have an obligation. We have an obligation to stand up, to speak out, to support groups like FIDF and what they're doing.
Amazing. I know from our staff and volunteers on the ground in Israel, that FIDF has participated in over 630 Shiva visits across the country and is delivering meals to bereaved families. How were you sort of cared for in those days while you were still in Israel? And, I know that, and this is sort of a separate question, but still we have Rose on video who spoke at an FIDF gala, with such amazing pride. What was the role of FIDF also in her identity and even in becoming a lone soldier? Was she already connected and knew of it when she became a lone soldier?
No, so Rose's connection with FIDF happened, of course, with Nefesh B'Nefesh when she got there. And it did so much to help her, guide her through the process of becoming a lone soldier, either with emotional support, financial support, and of course the trips home. It was amazing that y'all provided her a way to come back and see her family. It gave us a sense of relief too, because we knew that it was going to happen. And also, she knew she had someone on her side when she was there too. I always would hear about that there was always a way that she could get help if she needed it. And then as far as, the bereavement process for us, when Rose died, some of the first people that reached out to us was FIDF. Y'all came to our aid. In fact, Steve Wild, the CEO, met us at the airport in New York with kosher meals and walked us through the airport and took us to the plane and hugged us and held our hands. When we got to Israel, Seth Barron, who was the director here in this region, was at her funeral and came every day for Shiva to see us. I mean, this was it wasn't fake. It was genuine. It was a genuine caring, and as corny as sound, it was love. It was like the love that you have with like a really good friend and someone who really cares about you. And it's genuine and it's real. And we probably would have gotten through it, but would we have gotten through this is as, I wouldn't say as easy as it's been, but with a feeling that we're accepted somewhere and we always have a place to go. And FIDF has given that to us. They really have.
I want to give an opportunity. I know that I'm mindful of time and I know people have various questions. What kind of advice, and Eli, you can also feel free to chime in here. What advice do you have for parents still, David, having already experienced loss? What are the words of encouragement or advice that you have to incoming lone soldier parents? And Eli, what would you say to both the incoming soldier and the incoming parent?
I talk to other parents who have lone soldiers that are there, and I can only say is that don't let an opportunity go by to tell your kid that you love them. And I think that's got to go for all of us. I think we take for granted our children around us and the loved ones that we have, and they're very precious. And I think it's even deeper for parents because that have soldiers there. I can tell you there's a sense inside of them that they have like this weight that is on them every moment that their child is over there, every moment that their child is in battle or in combat or waiting to go into combat, or they don't know where they are. It's just this weight. It's a fear, and it's I used the word paralyzing earlier. It is, and I know where they're at. I know that feeling. I had anxiety. I couldn't sleep for a long time, and it was a level of anxiety that I had while Rose was serving. So I'm there with them, and I get it, and I hope this war can end and we can go back to peace, and we don't have to worry about our children dying.
One of the things that being when we were inside Gaza that I was able to feel and understand was, I mean, it's so much harder for our parents and for our loved ones on the outside, because when I was in Gaza, I knew I was safe. I knew my teammates were safe. I knew the chances were very high. My family was safe in LA. So, in that sense, everything was okay. I had anxiety from other things, I think, whatever could happen. But in terms of knowing my loved ones were safe, I knew everything was okay. I could only speak to my mom once every week, let's say. So she's freaking out. I mean, they had their own group chat of parents. Whenever someone would hear from everyone, they'd tell the parents. But, they are going through a battle of their own, which is no less. And even enlisting, like when I made the decision both times to do it, my mom was super scared, and you have to be very aware of the decision as a child that you're putting your parents through a lot as well. But at the same time, the way I always told my parents, like, look, I'm 22 years old, I'm 23 years old, this is my decision. I want to, the same way that, our grandparents, our parents, defended our rights and fought for our people, whether it was in Israel, the United States, or whatever it is. The same way when we were younger, we had people stand up for us for our right to exist and be here. This is our opportunity. Not everyone needs to do it, but for the people who do feel compelled, like Rose, she's a hero. and she'll never be forgotten. And it's something that we feel deep inside. People always ask me, why did you go back on October 7th when you already, my mom had said, you've done your service. Like, no one will look at you and say you didn't give your time for Israel those 3 years. You did more than anyone expects. Why do you have to go back? Go, just live your life, do other things. And there's no answer sometimes that you can really explain to someone when you feel it, when you know that you have to be in there. Nothing in the world would have kept me back from going in there at that particular moment to stand up. And it's something that, everyone feels. And if someone feels it, the last thing anyone should do is hold that person back.
Thank you so much. With that, I want to create an opportunity for anybody who has any questions or would like to share meaningful words of support. You can do so either on your mic or in the chat. Lots of thanks as popping up into the chat. Thank you. David and Eli, I think you should be able to see the chat. A lot of gratitude and importance of helping the Jewish people. And really, I want to thank everybody who came here tonight. I know if you're on the East Coast, it's real late. It's already almost 10 o'clock. If you're with Eli in his time zone, I don't know why I'm not even asking you, Eli, what time it is right now.
4 a.m.
4 a.m. I had a feeling. And for those across the country, there's just literally an endless number of ways that you can connect and get involved. Whether it's, in your local communities with your synagogues and obviously through FJMC. Thank you so much for hosting. And FIDF is literally in every single one of your communities. So if you have any questions, I cover the MidAtlantic region, but certainly there are other whether you're on the East Coast, Central, West Coast, South in the South in Florida and Texas, we've got you covered. So please participate. A question did pop up here. Eli, prior to your volunteering, were you in touch with any youth groups here that promoted a strong connection with Israel?
I will answer that and then also touch on some things that I think someone else had written up here, how best you can help other than contributions. In terms of youth groups, not that I can think of. I went to a Jewish elementary school, and then after that, I went to a non-Jewish middle and high school. I was part of a few different groups in college. One was like an Israel business group, but I think it was more just the community of people I was with. My parents were, my mom's Israeli, so she, all of her friends were Israeli, all of their kids were Israeli. It's that kind of community, but I can't think of. Hopefully there wasn't one that I didn't think about and didn't give them credit for. Then I feel bad, but I can't think of one. And then something that I always tell people, because I've been going on this whole speaking tour, which is why I'm here in Amsterdam right now. But one of the things that I always call this my new front line is what I'm doing right now, where the front line was on the battlefield in Gaza or in Jerusalem or in the north, wherever it was. And when we were released as reservists, at the end of February, middle of February, I felt like, the hostages are still there, the Hamas is still there, threatening Israel. Why am I leaving? The job's not done. Like, the reason I flew out here, the job's not done. There's so much more to do. And then I, landed in LA and opened up, Instagram, and I started going and seeing all the protests on college campuses, and I'm getting, called child murder on Instagram and being harassed and all these different anti-Semitic comments. And I realized that, in my own backyard, there's an entire battle that we're getting crushed in. So, what I've been doing since then is just going around and speaking and explaining my firsthand experience, in a lot more detail than you guys heard, with pictures and everything. But you know, I always say like this is what I'm doing personally, and I can share that. But it's a battle that, I was fortunate enough to be able to fly to Israel. I see it as fortunate enough, but to fight Israel on October 7th, to fight Hamas. Um, but the battle that I'm carrying out right now on the new front lines is something that everyone in this group chat can be part of. I mean, it's writing a letter to your congressman when you see that, you know, random link of like sign the letter. You don't know if you have the 30 seconds to sign it or not. It's, reposting on Instagram. It's having that conversation at the workplace. It's reading a couple articles so you're a little bit more informed for your next discussion with someone. It's all these little things because we're only 15 million. So we need to work that much harder, and it's something we can all do. And it's a different type of battle, but it takes all of us.
David, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, there's really not much to add to that. It just, I think the only thing I would like to add is that I think you asked a question earlier, Jennifer, about, how these kids are doing and what they're doing, or, young adults, even reservists. I do remember that I read Rose's journals when she, after everything. And one of the most compelling things that we read was that after October 7th, Rose did not, she wrote that she didn't feel safe at her home, which was her kibbutz. And there was a lot of pressure at her base. And she said she didn't feel safe there either. She felt the pressure coming all around her of what was happening. But through all of that, she said she knew what she was doing was right. It was what she was supposed to be doing. So we see all of these soldiers and all of these people there that are, know that their lives are on the risk, but they know what they're doing is right and is for the good of our people and our survival. I think we really need to recognize this. This is our survival, and our children and our families and people in Israel are putting it all on the line for that right now.
And, my daughter, my youngest, I have 3 children. My youngest is 10 years old now. It was before her birthday. So October 7th, she was still 9. And, it was Shabbat. Okay. And all of a sudden, Shabbat morning, I have Orthodox lone soldier parents calling my cell phone. Do I know what's going on? So we mobilized very quickly. To FIDF's credit, there was a what if emergency plan. So they literally just had to flip the switch to turn us into action. By Sunday at noon, we had a nationwide Zoom call with all of the staff. And right away, we were all started working. And my daughter says to me, what's going on? What's going on? You don't usually work on the weekend. Like, you're not usually working on Shabbat. What's happening? And she goes, don't lie to me. Tell me the truth. And so I told her in like an age appropriate way, what had happened, and that Israel had been attacked and that we were at war. And we were driving in a car, and she looks at me and she goes, Mommy, it is sometimes scary to be a Jew. And this is 9 years old, lives in suburbia, goes to Jewish day school, is the great granddaughter of an Auschwitz survivor. And on October 8th, she told me it is sometimes scary to be a Jew. And that has very much stuck with me throughout this whole 235 days, I think we're at today. And it sticks with all of us. And I think that right now what we're seeing is an awakening to a degree of the Jewish identity and Jewish life, and an understanding that, we really do, in fact, need each other. And that collective need and collective grief, while trauma might be in our DNA, courage is also very clearly in our DNA, and that we are here. And the courage, David, that you share when you share your story, Eli, the courage you have both when you're on the front line and now when you're really putting yourself at risk, also literally going across the globe, sharing your story. You put yourself at risk in a different kind of way. And, you might even argue it's riskier than Gaza in some ways. And so We really thank you all. Thank you both for coming here, and really we wish everybody a good evening, and you know, Am Yisrael Chai. We should all continue with life and with strength, and thank you so much.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments exactly. I'm just blown away by David and Eli, and also Jennifer, your personal stories, your heartfelt connections. You are an inspiration to every one of us on this call. Without people like you, the Jewish people would be in big trouble. But with people like you, I think we will do fine. Thank you so much for sharing your hearts with us and your lives with us. And I wish you all continued good health and strength. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I also want to thank Steve Pilchick and Larry Cleos, and of course, Bruce Fagan for their technical expertise. We at the FGMC continue to be committed to keeping our friends informed of current events in Israel and making our communities aware of Israel's history and assist our friends to advocate for Israel. And finally, I want to thank everybody who's kind of joined us tonight too. You've all helped us keep Israel on our minds. Know that we have your back, and we hope to see you again in the future. Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody, and have a good night.